Life, Love, Life Love Lessons Series 2 is designed with men in mind. Yes, men. Brothers, listen. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You have uncovered capacity for abundant living and loving. Hi, I am Teacher Hazel. Teaching is my ministry. I invite you, I challenge you to listen and learn some secrets that I will share with you in Life Love Lessons with Men in Mind. Note, living abundantly is your legacy.
Greetings, hello, and welcome to Series 2, Life Love Lessons with Men in Mind, Lesson 7. And this is the 7th of 8 lessons of Life Love Lessons with Men in Mind. And Lesson 7 is entitled Wait. Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. Teacher Hazel Ann Gibbs de Pisa, better known as Teacher Hazel. My intention, as always, is to encourage you to love the life you live and live a life you love, and to empower you to access the more abundant life that Christ came to give us by revealing and unraveling some of life, love, lessons. Let us begin with an acknowledgement of our Creator and Sustainer. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God sustains us. Wherever we are, God is. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I thank God for you, and I thank you for being here with me. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Life Love Lessons with Men in Mind, Lesson 7. So, welcome each and every one of you. And women, just as the men were welcome to Series 1, you are welcome to participate in Series 2. We are in this life together. So let me just remind you of a few lesson nuggets before we move into our penultimate lesson for this series of Life Love Lessons with Men in Mind. So, brother, when you know your worth, you don't have to keep proving it to yourself by trying to prove it to anyone else. Yes, but you must know your worth. Living abundantly is your legacy. Own it. Loving life is your destiny. Claim it. Remember, everything is energy. Everything is vibration. And like vibration attracts like vibration. So if you give out positive vibrations, you'll attract positive vibrations to yourself. If you give out negative vibrations, then you'll attract negative vibrations to yourself. And of course, by now, you know that you are infinitely valuable, exquisitely unique, and perfect in your personhood. And that's a quote from James McNeill. You know that your identity is not what you do, but what you be. Remember, it's about being, not just about doing. And of course, you remember that God made everything perfect, including you. Yes? Everything, including you. He made perfect. And that your thoughts create your world. So if you have ugly thoughts, if you have angry thoughts, if all your focus is negative, then you are creating that kind of world for yourself. If you have thoughts that are lovely and true and honest and good, you are creating that kind of world for yourself. Your thoughts create your world. And life is a symphony, and you are a powerful instrument in the symphony of life. And that's a quote from Michael Beckwith. Life is a symphony. You are a powerful instrument in the symphony of life. And of course, you know that you are a spiritual being currently sojourning in physical form and having a human experience. And please don't ever forget that your perception is your reality. So let me welcome those of you who are on for the first time and encourage you, if this is your first time, to check out the earlier lessons. They are available in Abundant Life Mastery at the Call on YouTube. And you are also welcome to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so that when the series is over, you will still know what is being placed on the channel to support you. And so, lesson 7, life, love lessons with men in mind. And the topic is wait. And you may be asking, what is the relevance of that topic, wait, to life, love lessons with men in mind? Why wait? Well, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like an eagle. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Teach me, Lord. Teach me, Lord, how to wait. Yes, wait. When we look through the scriptures, we see Psalm 27, verse 14. We are told to wait on the Lord. It's an instruction, it's a command. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So when you wait on the Lord, he strengthens your heart. And Proverbs tells us, say not thou, I will recompense evil, but wait on the Lord, and he shall save thee. Yes, it is not for us to get all hot and sweaty and to try to get even with people, we shall not recompense evil. What we should do is wait on the Lord. And if we do, he shall save us. And of course, the little chorus that I sang, Isaiah 40:31, which says that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. So when you wait upon the Lord, he renews your strength. So just within these 3 pieces of scripture, we see that we are commanded in one, we are admonished in the other, and we are advised to wait. There must be a lesson there for us to learn, especially in this era of fast food, digital, immediate communication, and instant everything. So let us consider and explore some concepts of waiting. You know, my mommy used to say, hurry dog does eat raw meat. Don't know if you ever heard that one. And if you're buzzing around the kitchen too much when the food is cooking because you're too anxious and you can't wait, she would say, put your head under the pot if you want it to finish fast. You know what will happen if you try to put your head under the pot, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a song, you know, from my days that said, you don't hurry, love, you just have to wait. You know, wait. That seems to be quite an important item. And so let's look at the first concept of wait. Waiting is an integral part of physical life. And remember, we are here in physical form, and our reality here is a physical one. So we have physical senses to deal with our physical environment. And what do we see in this physical environment? We see that growth takes time. You have to wait on babies to grow to be adults. You have to wait on the little balloon to blow up and get big. When you plant a seed, you have to wait on it to spring up out of the ground, and then you have to wait on it to become a tree. And when that tree bears flowers, you have to wait on those flowers to turn into fruit. And you have to wait on the fruit to get full. Yes. And if we look at the life cycle of the butterfly, we see that there are stages of waiting. And so we understand that waiting is an integral part of physical life. And you know, the interesting thing in terms of the butterfly, the story is told of this child who, seeing the butterfly fighting its way to get out of the cocoon, felt sorry for what seemed like a painful exercise and decided to help the butterfly and burst the so that it could come out. And of course, it came out much more quickly. But when it came out, it couldn't fly because in the process of bursting out, the wings are developed so that they are ready to fly when it gets out. But because it didn't go through that process, the wings were not ready to fly. The wings didn't know what to do. And the butterfly died because it couldn't move. You see, it didn't get a chance to wait on the process to take place. So our first concept is that waiting is an integral part of physical life. Our next concept is that time is an essential element of the human experience of this physical world. Time. So we see the clock alarming, and we see the hourglass, yes, and we see a whole series of clocks, different kinds and sizes and shapes that tell us about time in the physical world, in the human world. And that time is linear because it is counted in seconds and minutes and hours and days, months, years, centuries, linear, right? Of course, man has been forcing to change time and seasons, because with time goes seasons, right? So there are seasons for the weather, the rainy season, the dry season, spring, summer, autumn, winter, you know. And even in terms of our fruits, we used to have mango season and guava season, yes. And in terms of animals, you had to wait on the egg to hatch to get the chicken, and then you had to wait on the chicken to grow to become a fowl. That's what we called it when it got big, before you could cook it and eat it. But man has been trying to change those things around, hustle the growth of the chicken into adult status, and having the plants grow in all the seasons, so that you don't know when it's mango season anymore and when it's guava season, because they're forcing the trees to bear all year round. And they don't realize that what they're doing is upsetting the equilibrium, because many of the diseases that we have now is because of all that we're doing, the engineering that we're doing to the food that we eat, and the fact that in the past, you would eat a whole world of mangoes when it's mango season. But then when the season ended, you didn't have any more mangoes, so you'd be eating something else, whether it was guava or plums or cherries, right? So that what would happen is your body would get these elements at one time, and then it would get another set of elements at another time, right? So that you never had to have really what we now have as overdoses of certain things within our body, right? Because this physical life, this physical world is done in linear time. Everything has its time and its space and its season. And of course, you can make the most of your waiting time, or you can waste your waiting time. And we talk a little more about that. And we want to compare in the spiritual world, the time is different. Yes? Because we learn that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. So it's a whole different concept of time in the spiritual world from in the physical or human world. So we have waiting and we have time, linear time. So waiting. our third concept. Waiting requires patience, and waiting teaches patience. Yes? And we want to look at Joseph in Genesis. I'm sure you're familiar with this story. Joseph dreamed a dream, right? The sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to him. But it didn't happen overnight. As a matter of fact, he got into trouble with his brothers, who were envious of him. And so when they got the opportunity, they cast him into a pit. They wanted to kill him, and one brother said, no, let's not have that blood on our hands. So they eventually sold him to some Ishmaelites who were passing. And he went down into Egypt, and he ended up in prison, right? For being good, for wanting to wait on his time. Yes, for having patience. And it would seem that all was lost. Because here he was, first he was sold, and then he got a high position, and then he got into trouble because Potiphar's wife was after him, and he ended up in prison, and it seemed as if he would just languish in prison till the end of his life. But he had patience. Waiting requires patience, and waiting teaches patience. So eventually, Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And that dream that he had so many years before came to pass, that the sun and the moon and the stars bowed down before him, because here he was as the one person who was over all the land of Egypt. And in the time of famine, he was the one that everyone, including his family, had to bow to. But it wasn't a short road. It was a long road. It wasn't a straight road. It was a winding road. There were many turns along it. But Joseph had the patience to wait. And as he waited, the waiting taught him even more patience. So waiting requires patience, and waiting teaches patience. So if you're too hurry and you don't have patience, teach me, Lord. Teach me, Lord, how to wait. Let's look at another concept of waiting. Waiting requires courage, and waiting builds courage. So you see, you get both sides, huh? It requires courage, but it also builds courage. And on this occasion, we look at David. We all know about David, found in the book of Samuel, right? So David was a little fella having a time with his sheep, killing lions and whoever would come to eat his sheep. But he was enjoying himself. And while he was there, he was anointed to be king. But he was just a little fella, right? And he found himself playing a harp to calm the king whenever the evil spirit came on him. So he moved from seeing about his sheep to being at the behest of the king. And then it moved on to him being the one who was brave enough to face the giant, right? So there are lots of songs about David. Little David, play on your harp, right? And David and these 5 stones and how he killed the giant. Just with a sling and a stone. Yes. And after that, it took years. Now he had done this, he had killed the giant, and he was noted for it, and he was praised for it. And the king realized that, like, this one intended to be the next king. And the king started going after him. So that here he was, anointed to be king from a young boy, finding himself tasting life in the palace, but then having to run and hide to save his life, having to fight. And one would think that if you anoint me to be king, why are you going through all of this? But he knew to wait. And the waiting required courage, and the waiting built his courage until eventually the king died, and the men of Judah came and they anointed David king. And of course, he had a long and meritorious reign. But again, the road was not a short one. It didn't happen overnight. It was a long, winding road. It required courage to keep going. But the process also built his courage, so that by the time he became king, he was much stronger in many more ways. So waiting requires courage, and waiting also builds courage. Let's look at another concept. While we are waiting, God is working. And you remember I said a little earlier that you can either make the most of your waiting time or you can waste your waiting time. It is how you approach it, how you see it, that will make all the difference. Because while we are waiting, God is working. So we're going to look at 2 situations again. One is the movement towards the birth of John the Baptist. And we are told in the Gospel of Luke about Zacharias and Elizabeth that they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, blameless. Real good people, eh? But they had no child because Elizabeth was barren. And they were both now well stricken in years. In other words, they old now. And in spite of him being in the temple doing all his duties, and she being the best and sweetest woman there is, they had no children. And I am sure that everyone would have been saying, well, how they're so good and they can't even get a child and they want one. And in time, or as the Bible would say, in the fullness of time, the angel said unto Zacharias, fear not, Zacharias, for thy prayer is heard, and thy wife Elizabeth shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name John. Now, a whole lot of time passed there, but God was working his purpose out as that time of waiting took place for Zacharias and Elizabeth. And now look at the timing and understand why they had to wait so long. Because immediately after that came the birth of Jesus the Christ. So we get to the story of Joseph and Mary. And if you are familiar with the Bible, right, you will know that 6 months after Elizabeth got pregnant in her old age, Mary got pregnant. And she had, as we are told, in the 6 months, right? Angel Gabriel was sent from God unto a city of Galilee named Nazareth to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel said unto her, Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. Now, we know that John was the forerunner to Jesus. So if Elizabeth and Zacharias had had John in their youth, then the timing would have been out. So that while they were waiting, God was working because he was preparing some other things to happen within the timing. And so often we get all anxious and hot-headed because we're asking and we're praying for something and we find it taking too long. And brothers, you all know how you can't take the long wait. You know how you can't take the long wait. If it has to be done, it has to be done now. But you see, there is a timing. Because one thing has to happen for the other one to happen. And things have to be put in place. Right? And you all know that when you're mixing cement to pour concrete, it has to take a certain amount of time mixing until it gets to the right consistency. And then when you pour it, it has to take some time to dry and to draw and whatever else it does. You all know about that when you're doing work. Huh? If you're building something, you have to build certain parts first, even though you're not going to use them first. But you have to build those parts and put them there, and they have to wait until some other parts get in place and then to fit them in. Yes. So that the period of waiting, work is going on. And it is up to you to make the most of the waiting time. Remember your thoughts. Create your world. Remember your vibrations. Attract like vibrations. So if you spend the waiting time in expectation, then you enjoy the wait. If you spend the waiting time fussing and fretting and worrying and cussing, then you waste the waiting time because you build up a lot of negative energy, send out a lot of negative vibrations, negativize your circumstances. And the fact is, you still have to wait. You still have to wait. You see? Because God couldn't let John be born too long in advance of Jesus. And for Jesus to be born, he had to get the right person in the right situation in order to do it. So while he was grooming the right person and the right situation for Jesus to be born, he had to hold back poor Elizabeth and Zacharias so that the timing will be right. While we are waiting, God is working. We need to remember that so that we don't waste our waiting time. And you know, God is so beautiful. Huh? I recall a situation that I had fairly early in life. Plans were going afoot for building my own little empire, right? And everything was going well, and everything was in place, and everything was running smooth. And then all of a sudden, one person in one establishment stopped coming to work, and that person was the one person to sign off on the document that I needed. And you know how in our government offices, it's only one person could sign it. And if they're sick or if they take leave or anything, everything at a standstill because it's only one person could sign. We have that structure. So here I was, this one person wouldn't come to work. And I would visit the office and he not here today, and he off on leave, and he coming back next week, and he wouldn't come to sign the document. And this document was the one thing I was waiting on to take to the ADB to do the final signing of, in those days, a few $100,000 loan to start a farm operation. And I was saying, but God, how you could do me this? Oh gosh, we going so good all the time. I behaving a nice girl. And all of a sudden you just put a spoke in my wheel, man. And I will argue with him. And that was November. And December came. And on the 11th of January, my son's father, who was spearheading the business, who was going to be in charge of everything, died. And it was only when that happened that it dawned on me that if the man had come to work and signed off on the document, I would have already had the loan and I would have had nobody to run the project. And therefore, it would have gone into cost overruns because I'd have had to hire somebody. And you could imagine the madness to find money to pay back these how much $100,000 on my teacher's salary in those days, not like now, right? And it was then that I said, oh God, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Jesus. Because if I had signed off on that loan, what I would do now? While we are waiting, God is working because He sees the future that we can't see. Wait upon the Lord. It's a lesson that we all have to learn. And concept number 6, waiting is not doing nothing. Some people tend to feel, you know, we used to have a saying, when you tell somebody wait, they tell you wait is a heavy load. I'm sure you heard that. Wait is a heavy load, so they don't want to wait. But waiting is not doing nothing. Waiting is time for preparation, time for process, time for progress, and time for prayer. Yes? When you consider the athletes, you know, we have our own special fellas here. He's the Crawford and Van Lara and Keyshawn Walcott. What did they do with their waiting time? Before they could get to how many 100 runs and how many Olympic medals and gold and what have you. They had a long waiting time, from when they started. And during that waiting time, they were building determination. Have to get to that level. Developing discipline, training their body and doing what needs to be done, and honing their skills so that by the time they get out on the field, they're perfect. They're successful. Because they spent their waiting time in preparation. They allowed, as we would have seen from the very first concept, the time for the process to take place, the growing time. They would have gone through progress, moving from one level to the next. And I'm sure that they would also have been in prayer so that God could do some work while we're waiting. Yes? Bearing in mind that time in the human physical world is linear. Monday has to come, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and after that, Thursday. But understand that time in the spiritual, infinite world is not linear. It's spiral. It moves in waves. And these waves converge so that the past, the present, and the future are entangled into the now. So 1,000 years is like a day, because as the wave turns, there's entanglement. And you can read about that in all of the quantum physics and the string theory and the things that men are now, only now, finding out that existed all the time. Because that's how the world was all the time. It's just that men didn't know that. Of course, there were some who did, but nobody wanted to hear them because, this whole spiritual thing is, as they used to say, woo, right? So nobody wanted to really take them on with that kind of magic stories you're coming with, But now science is backing up all the stories of the ancients who spoke about these things, where past, present, and future are entangled into the now. So 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years in the spiritual realm. And you'll recall that things have to happen in the spiritual realm before they can manifest in the physical realm. Yes? So it's a combination that we have to understand in terms of life, and therefore the need to wait. So waiting is really about an awareness of the nature of time. Because when we understand the nature of time, when we follow the concepts of how time allows growth and development and the seasons and the years and all that has to happen, when we understand that, when we become aware of that, then we can live in alignment with nature and with the divine. And bearing in mind that we are spiritual beings, we are divine. We don't acknowledge our divinity. because we're so caught up in our physicality. But when we get in touch with the divine, when we listen to that still small voice, the intuition, yes, then we have harmony and we have peace. When we listen to that still small voice, when we remember that we have super faculties and intuition is one of them, when we understand that, then we will have calm energy. And we know that calm energy will attract calm energy. So that the period of waiting will not be wasted. And we will learn that we have to wait to listen. When we're too busy, we don't hear the voice of the divine in intuition because we're doing too much and not being enough. So we have to wait to listen. We have to wait to learn. You can't learn everything in one day. You have to wait to learn. You have to wait to see. Remember, if all you see is what you see, then you're not seeing half of what is there to be seen. Yes? We have to wait to see. We have to wait to think. Because the first thought that comes to your head when you see something and you react. But if you take a little time and wait, you'll understand. We have to wait to love. The little song said, you can't hurry love. You just have to wait, you know? And Otis Redding had one where he said, take time to know her. It's not an overnight thing. Gentlemen, am I saying something that resonates with you? Take time to know her. Don't rush into the thing. Wait. Learn to wait. Wait to listen, wait to learn, wait to see, wait to think, wait to love, and wait to live. So at this point, remember that God made everything perfect, including you. So you are perfect in your personhood. And that even though man does not always behave that way, it does not alter the perfection of God's handiwork. And of course, you can choose to live your purpose by being willing to wait. And therefore be the me that God created you to be. Or you can choose to be hurry and feel that waiting is not for you. It's up to you. You have choice, freedom of choice. You choose the life that you have. Remember, your results never lie. They show you what your thoughts were. So even when you may not have been aware or conscious that the kinds of thoughts you're having is designing the kind of life you are building for yourself, that's what was happening. The laws operate whether you know them or not, whether you accept them or not. And so that brings us to the time that we call Q&A. And I know that very often we don't have questions, but thankfully we have a comment tonight which says that the whole question, the concept of waiting, the concept of time is quite interesting. And I thank you very much, sister, for contributing your thoughts, right? we haven't had many questions during the series or many comments, but we've had one or two. And we are now at the 7th lesson out of 8. And I want to say, men, brothers, fathers, uncles, sons, become the I am of the power that is breathing you, and let go of the I am of ego and personality. There are two I ams. There's the I am of the ego, the one that can't wait, the one that doesn't have any patience. And there's the I am of the power of the infinite spirit that is breathing you, because you don't breathe yourself. It is the infinite spirit that breathes you. That I am understands the value of waiting, understands the now of the nexus between the infinite spiritual and the physical, finite physical. Yes? And remember that gratitude is the attitude of altitude, where love resides and where forgiveness dwells. You are in this place at this time for a purpose. It's not by chance. Remember, there's timing. Our time in the physical world is linear, but there's a timing in the spiritual world that manifests in the physical linear time. Right? And God has already made the way for you. It might seem as if everything is in turmoil and that nothing will work out. We just have to look back at David and look back at Joseph. We could even look back at Zacharias and Elizabeth. It seemed as if nothing was going to work out. But with time, with patience, with courage, with purpose, it all worked out. And do you remember the little mantra? I am me. I love the me that I am, because that is what God created. So at this point, we have come to the end of lesson 7, the penultimate lesson. Next week, we shall explore lesson 8, and that is entitled Love and Let Live. Love and let live. That is the final lesson in this series 2. And as usual, I hope that you have enjoyed being with me as much as I have enjoyed being with you, and that you have learned some of life, love lessons. And we have another comment, and I want to read it for you. It says that we've always taken time for granted. And the sister says that she never even put so much thought into it. So she's saying thank you for allowing us to think about it. Yes, and I thank you for your comment, right? And that is the whole purpose of this series, to encourage us to build that kind of awareness that takes us to the point of living the life that we love and loving the life that we live and getting access to that more abundant life that has been made available for us. And so as we go, I implore you to make every effort to love yourself. It's the only self you have. To love your life. It's the only life you know. To live abundantly. It's your birthright. And to love God. It's your purpose for being here. So again, I want to thank you for being here with me. I thank God for you. And I certainly hope that the lessons that we have been doing have made an impression upon you, helped to build your awareness. And I am looking forward to next week's Love and Let Live, and I hope that you are too. And I want to encourage you, if you have missed any of the lessons that went before, that you go on to the channel right where you are now. Go on to the channel and you will see all of the lessons that went before, and you can look at them and listen to them and therefore make the connections so that some of the things that I would have said tonight, you would find all the explanations for them in the earlier lessons. And in that lesson next week, we're going to be tying up all the ends, right? And let me also encourage you that if you subscribe to the channel, during the period when the life lessons are not being done on a weekly basis, you will be exposed to the other materials that I will be putting in the channel to support you, because having learned the lessons, I want you to make use of them, not just learn them and put them down. All right? So, love, joy, peace, sweet dreams, blessings. Thank you, and bye-bye. See you next week, God's willing. Stay blessed. God loves you, and so do I. Bye-bye.